Welcome to the Even Better podcast, where your host, Sinikka Waugh of Your Clear Next Step, brings you exciting content about making communities better by helping people get even better at work.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Even Better podcast. This is Sinikka Waugh, and this is part of our ongoing mission here at Your Clear Next Step to help us all have even better work days so that we can co-create better communities. I am delighted to welcome back my dear friend, Judy Alter. Judy, thanks so much for coming to join us today.
Well, thanks, Sinikka. It's always a pleasure to be here and talk about some of our favorite subjects.
Indeed. And time with you is always a joy. So for those of you who are tuning in, if you don't know Judy Alter, it is time to get to know Judy. Judy's been a long time friend of mine. We won't stop and count the years because that'll make both of us feel older than we need to today. But Judy, the optimistic BA, is a longtime friend of mine and a thought leader and a public speaker and a coach and a mentor and a trainer in the BA space, the business analysis space, with 20 years of experience in business analysis. And she has worked with Agile Frameworks. She is the optimistic BA. She is charismatic. She is optimistic. She is humorous. She's a successful leader. I've seen her in a variety of different places. She's served in leadership capacities in the International Institute of Business Analysis. And today she is here talking about 3 skills that make BAs stand out. And this is one of our shorter ones, our bite-sized lunch and learns, a walk-in learns. If you prefer to just have a shorter session, this is one of our little ones. So we're talking about 3 skills that make BAs stand out, business analysts stand out. So we're just going to get right to it, Judy. I know you know the business analysis community through and through. And the thing about business analysts is that I think there are certainly certified and licensed, professional, developed business analysts, but there are things that we can all learn from business analysts. There are things that we can all do and grow these kinds of skills within our own lives. And so this is not meant to be an exclusionary podcast. It doesn't eliminate the rest of us who don't have that job title of business analyst, because these are things we can all learn from. But here are 3 skills that make business analysts stand out in particular. And one of them that you shared with us in advance here is the idea of a detective. So a good business analyst, a standout business analyst, is like a detective. So unpack that for us a little bit, Judy. What do you mean by that?
Well, one of the main things that a business analyst does is they participate in elicitation sessions where they are taking a group of people from an area or a company that have asked for help from their leaders on a certain project. And the business analyst helps them to take a deep dive into the problem that they're bringing forth, and also trying to identify maybe some things or areas that people have overlooked. Sometimes people don't think broadly enough in their company, and if they're divided into silos, they install some change and then it affects another area. So hopefully ahead of time, if you can get them talking enough, you can get to the bottom of an issue. And I don't know how many times business analysts start new on a project. It's the first elicitation meeting, and the first thing is to get everybody talking. And usually if they're talking about something they don't like that's going on in their daily job, you can get them to talk. But what you're trying to do is get to the bottom, because they'll come to you with project A and they'll be like, okay, we need this new shiny piece of technology. Nowadays, everybody thinks that technology is going to solve their issues. Well, sometimes there might be non-user friendly systems where a user interface is the answer. But many times, if you deep dive enough, and one of the popular techniques that I use is the 5 whys. And it doesn't always stop at 5. Sometimes you might have to go to 8 or 15 to get your answers, because you just have to keep them talking and keep them taking a crucial look from the outside. And many times you'll get to where it really isn't problem A that is their true problem. It's problem B. And where that problem is not with the technology. It's with a process or a procedure change.
You bet. I remember that 5 whys is one of the first, I mean, that's one of the first techniques that a business analyst learns is why is this problem? Why does this problem exist? Not why is this a problem, but why is this problem? Why does this problem exist? Why do you think it's a problem? Why is it harmful? Why is it frustrating? Where did it come from? What's its origin? And just keep asking that why 5 times. And it's not a magical why. As you said, it's not a magical 5. It could be 6, it could be 7, it could be 27, but it's not 1, it's not 2, and it's probably not even just 3. It's a bunch of times.
Exactly. I have found, however, though, that you need to be cautious about using it on your family. It doesn't go quite as well as in the business world. And I saw a speaker one time, not that many years ago, where instead of using the 5 whys, he proposed using the 5 whats, because it sounded not, sometimes when BAs get all excited about something, I think they're a little blunt, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And, it just sounds like a little softer if you've got a sensitive group. But I've usually done okay with the whys, but I suppose you could do the 5 whats.
Yeah. So you've been involved, Judy, in the rollout of the Changemakers curriculum, and we have a whole day dedicated to problem solving and process improvement. And one of the tools that we teach is a version of the 5 whys, and asking how did this problem come to be, and what's the background here, and what other problems are caused by this particular problem. And it really is a dive deep into why is this problem? Why did this problem come to be? And it's that detective like skill, that elicitation that you're talking about here, which makes BAs stand out, and that we really all need to be better at as change makers, because in order for change to happen, in order for us to get from where we are now to where we want to be, we got to figure out why does this change need to happen? What's the why behind this thing that we're trying to accomplish?
Right. And I think that too, we're kind of very good at solving puzzles. And so while other people might throw up their hands, oh, well, we can't deal with this. We just keep chunking it out, a piece at a time. And sometimes it's amazing, in an organization, you will find that the different areas don't communicate enough with each other. And so sometimes you uncover things that maybe the people who work in the area you're trying to help don't even know, that some things that go on in their organization.
For sure. You've probably got a story or two on those.
Oh, yes. A very short one that I will share was one of the last big projects I worked on before I retired. I had a little bit of downtime because they were going to refactor something, and everybody was up in the air about how many policies that this new life insurance product we were working on could produce every day. And somebody was trying to tell someone else that they could only do 25. Well, I was kind of shocked by that. And they came to me and asked me to go investigate it, because we had a longer version of this policy that there was no limit. And, it was like policies were several hundred pages long. And this was this was an express product that wouldn't even be that long. So I found out who ran the policies. And so I went over to the area where it was printed. And after talking to them for about 10 minutes and explaining what everybody was all up in the air about, they realized that there was a setting that was set wrong on their printer. Problem solved. Yes. I honestly feel that the whole issue behind this thing, because I know how my fellow playmates worked, is that they had to get up, go off the floor, walk through the tunnel to the other building, and that was kind of unheard of at that time. But I was very pleased that I had, one feather in my cap going out the door. That's why I always am a big proponent of, you need to really elicitate thoroughly, because you never know what you might find out.
You bet. Be like a detective. Go see, go study it, go figure it out.
Yeah. And falls into communication.
You bet. You bet. So that's going to take us to the second one. So we're here with Judy Alter, and we're talking about 3 skills that make a business analyst stand out. First one was detective. So the second one is the communicator. So let's unpack that. We can go lots of different directions in this, but we know that communication skills are critical to the business analyst. But talk to me about some of the ones that you see. How does communication play out for a business analyst?
Well, I do think that it comes down to being clear, concise, and complete. And it also applies to both written and verbal communication. So many people nowadays solve things verbally, which is fine, but sometimes you kind of need a record of things. I guess that comes from working in a highly regulated industry all of my career, and that it's a different ballgame than at a startup. But the foundation of communication does not begin with a C. It is listening. And it can work virtually or in person. And you have to listen to understand. And with that, what I mean is you don't just interrupt them every 2 minutes. And especially if you're virtual, you want to give them some, nods and some, not just sit here and stare, They're not sure if you're sleeping with your eyes open or what. But at the end, what you need to do is ask questions to make sure you understood what they were saying, because sometimes you might understand. And I found that if somebody's outlaying like 7 or 8 bullet points, so to speak, that even if you don't like all of them, try to find 2 or 3 things positive about at least 2 of them. And then as you give them feedback on the rest of them, then you find that they will respond in a much different way than if you say, oh, no, we can't do it that way. You need to do blah, 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 blah. People just turn off to that, understandably so. And so you need to be a clear communicator. But with stakeholders in a project, especially if you're going to come in and transform their area, obviously people are worried about their jobs. And so you need to be transparent about as much as you can about what you're doing. And 9 out of 10 times I've seen where people got better opportunities after a transformation.
Yeah.
But you just have to be very clear, and you need to be able to break down the barriers and have good, crucial conversations. Sometimes they're not all that pleasant, but it depends on how you approach it. I'm very calm, and I try to approach it with logic. I don't approach it pointing fingers. And sometimes if it's part of a group project and something has gone wrong, I'll say, okay, I'll start out with, I could have done this better because. And then when I've been vulnerable, then they open up a lot better.
Well, and I think here we're going to get to maybe some of the other things that you've talked about and that you're particularly good at, and that the BAs that I've known and that we've known together stand out at it. Yes, clear. Yes, concise. Yes, complete in communication. But the really standout communicators, they've got another C that I think is really important. And I think there's compassion there, isn't there?
Yes. And I also think that you need to develop a relationship with your stakeholders. This is where being on a stable team where you support the same area for a long time, in my case, several years, because you really get to know somebody. And I grew older with a lot of them, and so all their hot buttons, what's gonna, what can go wrong. And you'll be the best thing in the world and you'll be the trash all in the same day. But I think if you can get them to relate to you as a person, and so you need to be a little vulnerable and talk about ABC before you get them. And once you've gained their confidence and trust, they will do anything in the world to help you. And that's the key. We need to get them to, as I said before, they need to help us help them. And that's very key.
Yeah. So When we think about, again, the Changemaker curriculum, so much of that is dedicated to communication. It's the opening module is all about communication, and it continues to play a part in, emotional intelligence is part of that, and communication shows up in a portion of every one of the sessions, and bringing out the best in others is one of the sessions. And we think about the role of like advanced facilitation is part of the module, which is certainly something that business analysts use, and how they facilitate and how they communicate, listen. There's process listening and content listening in that. And, the process listening being the what's going on in the room, not just the content listening, what are the words being spoken, but the process, who's falling asleep in their chairs, and, who's checking out, who's annoyed, who's frustrated, how are we on our agenda. So paying attention to those things. And so the communicators, the business analysts who are trying to grow their skills in that space, the Changemakers curriculum is so full and so rich of that heavy emphasis on growing that skill, because it's so crucial. My gosh, it's so crucial to what we're doing. And you're seeing that play out in the curriculum, and as you're rolling up your sleeves and getting into this stuff.
Right, exactly. And, facilitation, communication, well, dealing with people, probably about 85% of what I did as a business analyst. If somebody has those skills and they come to you, you can teach them your company's computer systems, and you can even help them learn to draw a template or a Visio diagram, those sorts of things. But sometimes you just can't teach the other part, and that is so key. And one of the things with facilitation sessions that someone we both know, Angela Wick, told me years ago in a class, more than 8 don't collaborate. And it wasn't her who said it. I can't remember who she said. It was another one of our BA friends, but it makes a lot of sense. If you have 40 people in a room, you're not going to get anything done, because the loudmouths are going to overtake the room, or they'll overtake the Zoom session, however you're doing it. And honestly, you just need to do several sessions and then combine everything together. I think that helps to get to the right people and get to the point where everyone has a say-so in it. But I do feel that you also need to know not only something about the stakeholders you're trying to help, but you also need to know, how do they want to digest their information?
Yeah.
Someone at the C-level or even director level, they just want mere details. They don't go deep into the weeds. Now, somebody a little further down the chain, they want to know everything. And the end users, obviously, they want the most details. And so you have to tailor your communication based on what people prefer. There was one supervisor that no matter what we did, even if it was just putting a button on a screen in a certain position, I had to send it to her. And then after she got the email, she would call me and we would discuss it, but then she would come to my desk and she needed me to go through everything. That was just her level. And in her defense, we started with a change on her department. It was pretty major. And this was a customer facing unit. And after we had them sign off on the first round of documents, and then we realized they were wrong, it was because they weren't used to working with project teams. And at first, they wouldn't let us sit with the people, but then we kept after them, and then we did. And that was where we got the right stuff. But that really makes a difference. You have to cater. Some people like a phone call, some people like an instant message. I preferred email if it was something that you had to keep a copy of. If it was something that was maybe compliance related. If it was just a conversation, can we meet today at 10? I don't care how you ask me that, but it's kind of, I always kind of went by the rule of thumb of the, what kind of records do we need to keep, on this.
For sure.
Yeah. And
Sure.
so that was, but if you can cater the way they want it, you'll really get a level of comfort with them that maybe some other BAs don't. I've always tried, when I'm in any sort of conversation with a customer, stakeholder, whatever you want to call them, I always try to make them feel like they're the only person in the world at that moment.
Nice.
Yeah, I've had good luck with that, and that's how you get them on your side. That's the biggest thing.
Nice. Well, let's get to that third skill. So 3
Yeah.
skills that make BAs stand out. We've talked about being a detective and an effective communicator. And now we're going to move on to that third one of being an agent of change. And if you're listening and you've just joined us, you got to go back to the beginning because we're here with Judy Alter. And we're in one of the Lunch and Learn bite-sized podcast episodes. The last of these 3 skills that make BAs, business analysts, stand out to be an agent of change. So what does that look like, Judy? How does a business analyst, how do they stand out by being an agent of change?
Well, a business analyst, and particularly a senior level business analyst, they need to really step up and be a leader. And sometimes that includes being a mentor, a coach. Usually you're a trainer because you usually are training the newer BAs. And the biggest thing that you want to assure, whether it's your own business or whether it's a company, you want to be bringing along the next group of leaders. And so in the business analysis world right now, a lot of the thought leaders are not short on gray hairs. And so, while everybody's passionate about their job, eventually you might want to go on a vacation without a laptop, though I can't imagine what that's like. But, you need to be bringing along the next group. And knowledge transfer was a big thing at the company I was working at, because it wasn't just me who was retiring. And there was a large amount of information that has walked out the door in the last decade. And I always wanted to share the knowledge, because if I was the only one that knew how something worked, then I had to do all the work. And I really didn't like that. But that's just to keep the company sustainable, because you don't want to get down to a point where a few people leave and then all of a sudden no one knows how to do something. That's what we do, is we make change, we groom leaders, and we really think outside the box of a solution. We're not going to tell an area what to do, but we will give them usually 2 or 3 options depending on what it is, and give them the pros and the cons. I know one time we did that, and we told them why they shouldn't do a certain option, and they did it, and they wanted us to do it anyway. And then one morning they showed up with cookies, groveling for us to make a change because they should have listened to us in the first place. So it's kind of funny. You don't want to tell them what to do, but maybe sometimes you do know best. And that's why the change makers is so good. And number one, I enjoy, and I'm one of the people that's working on putting the assessment together. And I enjoy that because that's really right up my craft and my wheelhouse of things, and things like that. But a company might do 1 or 2 things, but the Change Makers program does all 3 together simultaneously. And as you put it, it's not, it's lasting. It's not just an event for a week or 2. And I think that's where some companies just don't quite get it. They don't finish it, I guess. They do 8 out of 10 steps.
Yeah. Judy, as you're saying all 3, we were talking a little bit before this, and so for our listeners' benefit, I want to talk about the all 3 there. What Changemakers does is it talks about the 3 things that people who are change agents, people who are change makers, they do these 3 things. They put the good of the business first, which business analysts do. They're looking to provide value, right? They're creating value for stakeholders. So you put the good of the business first, and they make authentic human connection. And that's right. That's connecting with your stakeholders, the authentic human connection. And we treat change as a process, not an event. So change doesn't happen poof overnight. Rome was not built in a day.
No.
Change doesn't happen instantaneously. It's a process, not an event. And if we do those 3 things, if consistently, we put the good of the organization first, we make authentic human connection, and we facilitate and enable authentic human connection, and we continue to treat change as a process, not an event, we can be enablers of change. We can be change makers. We can be agents of change.
Right.
And in the definition, the very definition of business analysis, right, is the practice of enabling change in an organizational context. So business analysts, they should be flocking to change makers, right? And if you want to elevate your skills as a business analyst, change makers is where it's at. That's where we should be.
Exactly.
Because that's what we should be doing.
Yes.
Yeah. I am super excited about where this curriculum is going, and we'll talk about it just a little bit. So it's got the eight full classes. The full curriculum has 8 full day trainings. It has a 10-month curriculum where you get a day dedicated, it's spread out over time, but a day's worth of time dedicated to just your own personal reflection on what you're learning in the trainings and your own, because learning doesn't just happen in a training, it happens on reflection of the experience and the reflection on the learning. So you've got 8 full days of training, 1 full day's worth of time dedicated to your own reflection, 1 day's worth dedicated to coaching, individual or small group coaching for you, 1 day's worth dedicated to building your network. So you carve off, in these 10 months, you carve off time to build your network and intentionally go meet people, go develop relationships in your network so that your network gets more robust and you can be a better change agent. It's just so cool. And for organizations, we bring it in, and it's not a matter of saying, oh, what you've done before doesn't matter. It's a matter of building on what you've already done. You've invested in process development. You've invested in leadership development. Great. You've invested in Agile. You've invested in a PMO. You've invested in process improvement. Right. Wonderful. Great. You have that. We're going to build on that and help you grow change makers across your organization.
Right. And what's really neat about the program is it isn't one size fits all. There are different levels of change makers depending on maybe where the company is and what they need and what they're willing to. This does require a time commitment, and that sometimes is the biggest thing.
You bet.
Yeah.
You bet. Oh, Judy, thank you. Thanks for your time today. So we've talked about 3 skills that make BAs stand out, and I know you've got your eye on the BA community, but what's making you even better these days?
Well, I do think that being involved in change makers has really helped me to kind of sharpen my elicitation skills. Because really, based on what I have been doing since I left my volunteer position with IIBA, I don't do a lot of that. It's just I've been doing some other things. And, not that you ever lose that craft, but it helps to be, leading edge. And it's really satisfying as a BA to make a difference. Particularly after a huge project that, saved like millions of dollars, or something with the IIBA where I helped to build it or made a difference. It's really kind of cool to sit back and look at that, knowing you had a piece of it.
Wonderful. Well, Judy, thank you so much for your time today.
Mm-hmm.
Always a joy.
It always.
It's always a joy to hang out with you.
Yeah.
And to our listeners, thanks so much for tuning in. And on behalf of all of us here at Your Clear Next Step, we hope the rest of your day is even better.
Thank you for tuning in today. The Even Better podcast will be back with more content soon. But in the meantime, subscribe to our podcast or check out our website at yourclearnextstep.com for more information. See you next episode.